Hey, what's up? I'm gonna do another video in English. So, um, this one is gonna be probably like weirder. I've been thinking about a lot about time, like how God is outside of it and how that messes up our way how we think about God. So I was thinking about how time in like the human sense, like we live in it, and then it we always because we think we try to put God in time too, but that God clearly is not inside time. He invented time. So it's like part of like when we think about God, like it's hard for us to think about God in terms that are like not about us. It's like the anthropomorphism of God. Like I don't know, when we put human characteristics on God, Augustine said that if we were horses, we would think about God as a horse, but because we're people, we think about God as being like a person, right? Um, and time is weird when you think about it. Like when you think about what was before time, like it doesn't make a lot of sense because we need time to make sense of stuff, right? Like we live in time, so like we have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we think like that. We're progressive thinkers. We learn things basic, like first you learn your ABCs, and then you learn words, and then you learn sentences, and then you learn like the language. But we don't. We need to have progressive thinking, and God doesn't do that. God is infinite and he knows everything. So he knows he doesn't learn progressively. He knows intuitively, right? Like it's hard for us to like for me to even imagine like does God think? Like I think because I think progressively. Like I form ideas and then those ideas combine with other ideas and I get another idea. Like you have the fundamental basic concepts that you know, like language, and then you use those things to build other things. So your knowledge is like constructed using like a whole bunch of like networks that you've already made in your brain to construct like concepts. And if God already has the concepts and his intuitive knowledge, and it's really confusing. Like God God doesn't think or what he has to descend to our level. So like in the scriptures when it talks like about like well God, like we in order to even have any sort of reality, we have to understand through like him condescending to our level. Well, that was being said, I was thinking about time, like God and time. God is clearly beyond time. He invented time. So before the creation of the world, there was no time. There is no such thing as before time because like, when he invented time, he also invented the concept of before and after. So it's really weird. And something that like hurt my brain. I don't know if it's very useful, but it hurt my brain. Which is when things hurt my brain, it kind of like makes me like that's neat. That hurt my brain. Um, like I've always thought about time as starting um, at like the creation and like you working towards the end. Um, but I was reading. I don't even remember where I was reading. I think it was in Rushdoony, and he talked about um, maybe we're like time is like a river and we're standing in it and it's flowing towards us from the future towards to the past. And that blew my brain. I was like, that's hard to understand. Maybe time is like a river and we're standing in it and the current is flowing from the future towards the past. That was like weird. Like does time work like that? I think it probably could. That's why like I always think of time moving in this direction from the past towards the future. But I think if it could technically move from the future towards the past. I mean, because God's outside of time, right? So, like, I think it probably could do that, which is weird to me. Like, thinking of time flowing towards you, that's It's a weird concept. But I think because God is outside of time, like I think it's possible, because I think it's we always get stuck in our own heads, and we use our own perceptions, our own point of view to like view things, which is wrong, because like we are not outside of it to see, like we're inside of it. Like we are not the artist, we are inside the art. So like our perspective of viewing things is part of the creation. So like Augustine explains it like if you're like a kid watching a parade go by, like you see it in order. You see like first the elephants went by, and then I saw the giraffes, and then I saw the band, and at the end there was a bunch of monkeys, and then there was drummers, and that was the end of the parade. But it says if you were on a building above the parade, you saw the entire parade pass by at the same time, right? So like the person that saw standing right next to the street saw like an ordered procession, but the person above saw the whole thing as one big giant mob moving, right? So like your point of view changes your perception of the act. So like life is like that because we see it in ordered, beginning at this point and ending at this point, or right? Like I was born in 84 and I've lived progressively until 2022, right? But I lived progressively, I learned progressively, everything is a progression in time. But with God, there is no past, present, or future because he is outside of time, right? So that's weird, right? So like all of creation, all of the plan of salvation and redemption that we see is taking place in time, right? Like because that was part of the creation. He created time, he created order, he created like the beginning, the middle, and the end. It's like he knows the end from the beginning. That's in Isaiah, I think. Like there's no for him like this. Like there's a is in a way God creation is already ended for God, right? Like the second he created it, he also ended it. It was a singular act in God, right? But we're still living it, which is confusing, at least to me. Like there is a way in which, in the eyes of God, like I'm already glorified, right? Like he knows my end. He knows that because Christ died for me, I am glorified. But I'm in the processes. I'm still in the time. I'm not glorified yet. But in the eyes of God, like there's almost a way in which the world is already over. He already has won, and we're glorified, and we're the bride of Christ. So it's really weird because like, in creation, salvation, redemption is a progressive act for humanity, but it's like a singular act for God. Um, that's just weird to me. I don't know if it makes sense to other people, but that's hard for me to understand. But I think, I mean, it makes like everything seem more hopeful because he already is won. Like he's already won. I'm just waiting for the victory because I'm living inside the art. Like he's already painted the victory, but I'm just in the part that is still in the state of grace, right? Like, he painted Adam and Eve at the beginning, and he painted me here, and he painted the end of the world. And for him, it's already painted, but I'm just living in it. I'm part of the art, and I'm thus progressively learning the revelation of God for His glory. But all this weird time stuff is weird, and well, that's about it. Somebody else, when I was reading St. Augustine, Augustine's crazy. Not crazy, he's smart, but he was willing to talk about anything. Like Calvin had the wisdom to only talk about Bible, When the Bible stopped talking, he stopped talking, which is a very good policy. But Augustine would talk about basically anything that he could think about. And he talked about a lot of stuff like this. And somebody asked Augustine, why did God create the world when he created it? And Augustine said, that's not a very good question. And they're like, why? He's like, I'll ask you another question. Why did God create the universe where he created it? Why not like 3 feet to the left? And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. He's like, the same thing with time. That question doesn't make any sense. God invented place when he created the universe. He could have invented that place 3 feet to the left, but he didn't because he invented place. He invented length and width, and he also invented time. So there was no before the creation. There was God. God was before, but there was no time before, so there can be no before. I don't think time ends, right? So like, I don't know. Time is weird, but when you think about time, then that really affects like length and width and space and stuff. So it's all kind of connected. Just kind of, I'm not sure. That's still kind of confusing to me. And then, like, and also thing about Augustine said, he said, like math. Even I don't know if you ever did math. They show you can't ever cross 2 points. Like if you cut that in half, you go like you have an inch, and then you cut the inch in half, and cut the inch in half, and half, and half, and half. And you get infinitely small halves. But then how do you, if you can cut that into an infinite amount of spaces, then how do you ever cross the gap? I don't know the answer to that. But you're saying the same thing applies to time. If you cut a minute in half, and then you cut a minute and a half, and a minute, you get like a second, and half a second, and half a second. Eventually, you get infinitely small time. So you never really get to the present. But if you don't have the present, then how do you get to the future or the past? Like it doesn't. I don't know. That's things that just break my brain, and I'm not sure if they're very useful. But God is awesome, and He can cast a span over infinity. So I guess that's the only way to make sense of it. But yeah, nothing makes sense outside of God. So yeah, all powerful sovereign God that created the universe, that created meaning, created time and space, created the beginning from the end and the end from the beginning. So God that you should probably be worshiping and studying. It's worth your time to study. Do some reading. That's my. I don't know what's going on with all this time stuff. I was just thinking about it today because, yeah, time is weird. All right, laters. That's all I'm gonna talk about. It doesn't really make a lot. I'm not that useful, but God's the only thing that makes sense of any of it. So, bye bye.